Well, it's good to be out here tonight with you. I pray that the Lord will give you something. I'm in Matthew chapter 13, and this is where we talk about the wheat and the tares, where the good grounds, the thorny grounds, the wayside, and the good grounds. And there's one verse that I want to talk about. If you want to follow along with me, if you look at verse 10, Jesus is talking to the disciples and they're asking questions. Why are you talking to the people in a parable? And he answers that question in verse 11. And then he moves on over to verse 23. Verse 23 is where I want to focus on tonight. This is referring to the good ground. That should be every Christian's desire, is to be on the good ground. It's my desire to be on the good ground. That's where the production of fruits is going to come from. It's the only passage that talks about the good grounds and the measure of the good grounds. I want to read verse number 23 is the verse that I want to highlight tonight, and I want to break it down. I want to tear the verse apart, and I want to put it back together so that we understand exactly what Jesus is saying when he got to the good grounds. And hopefully maybe it'll make sense. It says in verse 23, but he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit and bringeth forth fruit, some an 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30. Now that verse is pretty self-explanatory, but let's break it down. In the first line, but he that received seed into the good ground. God always furnishes seed. And he knows who it is that's going to be faithful with the seed. He knows who's going to throw the seed into the wayside, on the edge of the field. He knows who's going to toss seed into the thorns. He knows where this seed is going to be put. I think there's stony ground that didn't have much root and it withered away. And then it talks about the good ground. And it says he that receives seed into the good ground. See, this verse is only talking about the good ground. It's not talking about the other ground. The other ground can be considered to be ground. The wayside had ground where the seed would grow, but maybe not to the abundance. Some Christians fit into the wayside because they choose to stay away from the corporate part of what God is really wanting to do. So they're just happy in being by the wayside. Well, there's no victory in the wayside. If you go onto the ground of where the ground has got a bunch of thorns, you know what happens. The thorns will choke out the good seed, and it will cause the seed not to come up because of the shade of the thorns and the roughness of the ground of the thorns. So therefore the seed is hindered into the thorns. And then when you go and get on stony ground, the stony ground doesn't have the depth of earth. And some Christians like to be on the stony ground, but there's no real success on the stony ground. There's maybe a few seed that grow into thorns, but there's no real success. There's no real abundant harvest. There's no real abundant harvest by the wayside. You know, a farmer that cuts a field of hay is not really worried too much about around the edges of the field. They're more concerned with the center and around the sides and all of that. But right along the edge of where the fence is, there's just not a whole lot there to gather up. So therefore, it's not that important to get up right next to the edge of the fence. Well, this verse here that we're studying tonight is talking about, but he that receiveth. The he is the people that desire that good seed. The ones that desire that seed that is planted on the good grounds. And that's the reason he's mentioning it here. But he, see, it's a person. It could be you. It could be me. But he that received seed. See, God gives seed, and it's what we do with the seed of where it comes up. If I sow sparingly, I'm going to reap sparingly. If I sow bountifully, I'm going to reap bountifully. That's really what this verse is actually saying. But he that receives seed, that's the first thing you have to do, is you have to receive the seed that comes from God. God is the one that gives you the seed. He gives you the ability to desire to plant it, to plant it on good ground. I happen to find that in my own personal ministry, I enjoy planting seed into elderly people, people that are in the nursing home, people that are abandoned, people that are sort of left to the wolves, so to speak. Elderly people, for the most part, don't matter. A lot of churches don't focus on the elderly community. They just don't. Elderly people don't pay tithes. I'm talking about people in nursing home now. I remember I had a woman come to me several years ago that she had $3 that she wanted to give me as her tithe. And I just told her, I said, ma'am, you know, I appreciate it very much, but I want you to have the money. I want you to have the money. I want you to use the money where you see fit. Thank you for your gift, but please use the money. And she did. And I think that it surprised her that I would say to her to use the money. Well, what am I saying right here? It's talking about he that receives seed into the good ground. Whoever plants it into the good ground is he that heareth the word. Now, the word that it's talking about here is the Bible that I'm reading in front of y'all. This is the word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he's talking about here, he that heareth the Word. Now, it's one thing to hear, it's another thing to act on what you hear. So it says, for he that heareth the Word and understandeth it. That's where a lot of people fail, is because they do not understand. It's not because they're dumb. It could very well be because they maybe will be unlearned. Maybe nobody is ever stepped up to the plate to try to nurture a person. You know, a lot of people get root bound. They're a lot like a plant. My wife has plants, and every now and then we have to pull that plant out of that smaller pot, and we have to put it into a bigger size pot. And the first thing you do is you massage the roots, and you take off a little bit of the dirt off of the edge of them root bound roots to have it where they stick out a little bit. You wipe some of that dirt off, not too much, maybe a half an inch or so, just sort of scrub the sides. And then you put it into good fertilized soil. And when you do that and you begin to water it, all of a sudden that plant is almost like giving that plant oxygen. And that plant responds to the ease of that newer ground where the roots are getting the nutrients that it needs to grow. Well, that's what's happening here. He that heareth the word, that's just like taking a plant out of a pot and putting it into a bigger pot, and understandeth it. See, don't believe you me, a plant knows when you put it into a bigger pot. It does respond to a growing process that happens literally overnight. That plant is desiring a beautiful outcome because it's got the nutrients that it needs. And then it says, which also beareth fruit. Now, you know what? A bush or a plant is going to bear fruit. The fruit that the plant may bear will only be leaves. A house plant doesn't really bear fruit, but it bears the healthiness of the plant. I'm looking at two of my wife's plant. One of them has got a flower on it, and I'm looking at it right now, and I'm looking at the flower that is growing over there in that plant. And I'm seeing evidence of life. I'm seeing evidence of green leaves on them two little plants. And that is the fruit of that plant. Maybe it might not be fruit that you can eat, but it's fruit that you get joy in looking at. And that's all God wants to do too. He's wanting to get joy from your life so that he can get satisfaction from your life. He can get glory from your life. I know that plant is living. I know it's nutrient. I know it's got nutrients in it because they got very, very dark leaves. Some of them are lighter. Some of them are darker. It's probably because she's got that plant in a small container. That plant probably needs to be moved to a bigger container. In order for all the leaves to be dark green, it probably needs to be moved, see? And that's right in front of me right here. But listen to what else it says. It says, which also beareth fruit and bringeth forth, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Now let me say this. Not everybody is going to be 100-fold person. Not everybody. Some people is going to be content in being a 60-fold person. Some people's only going to be a 30-fold person. What that actually means is some people might only be maybe 5. Some might be 21. I would imagine that a good percentage of a lot of people would rate somewhere in that 20% level. They go, they attend, they worship, they believe. But due to the stress and due to the aggravations of life, due to the times of the virus and the things that are going on and the lockdowns that are going on and the depression that is out there that's going on. It's almost like that people are satisfied and just saying, you know what, I'm glad I know God, but God, I don't really want you to handle this situation, or I don't want you to handle that situation. Let me handle that situation. You take all the big ones. Let me handle some of these little ones. Well, no, that's where the problem is. That would be like me putting fertilizer in part of that plant on one side and the other side don't get none. So which one do you think is going to help the plant the most? The one that has it evenly displayed all the way around? Sure. He says here that some is going to be 100-fold. Now, you know what? It'd be nice to be able to go out and plant a cornfield where you get 100-fold harvest. That would be like a quadruple harvest. You know, I mean, I would love to be able to know. I've got a few greens planted in pots out there. They don't really look all that good. They never do when they're real tiny and real young. When they're only like an inch or an inch and a half tall, they just don't give you the impression that they're doing anything. And then all of a sudden, it almost just sort of like overnight begins to just take off and grow. Just like that plant that I'm looking at over there. So see, not everybody is going to be 100-fold. And you know what? There's places for people that are 60-fold, and there's places of people that are 30-fold. But here's the thing. If you a 30-fold person, do you desire to be 40? If you are a 60 person, do you desire to be 70? And if you happen to be 100, are you satisfied in staying 100? Or would you like to be able to know that, Lord, I want to do more for you. Make me 110% person. Make me 110-fold. You know, that's the question. See, too many people like to just stay in their comfort zone. And their comfort zone is some is 30, some is 10. I hate to say it, some is 5. Some might be as low as 1. The ones that think that they're 100 really might not even be but about a 60. They might be 100 in their own mind. But in the truth of reality, God knows where we are. He knows where I am. He knows where you are. He knows if you a 30-fold person. He knows if you a 60-fold person. He knows if you even desire to be anything more than that. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs 11 and verse 30, he that winneth souls is wise. Do you realize there's going to be a lot of people that's going to end up getting to heaven, and they're not going to have anyone that they witness to? They're just not. I know of people right now that they don't witness to nobody. They won't even give a gospel tract to nobody. They won't even witness to their own family. How heartbreaking is that? Knowing that we're not even willing to witness to our own lost family. It's almost like that we honestly believe that the gospel is just a bunch of make-believe. I happen to believe that it's not make-believe. He that winneth souls is wise. I've said this one time, I'll say it again. If the Lord entrusts me with 10 souls, I don't want to get to heaven with 7 or 8. I want all 10. I hope that you feel the same way. Are you in this verse of verse 23? Are you on the good ground? That might be a question that you might want to ask yourself as I close. elderlyministry.com is the website. You're welcome to go there, pull down the phone number. Please give me a call. Leave a message. Please leave a message, and I will return your call. Okay. Thank y'all for watching.